Welcome into the Bonesville Pregame Podcast. Al Myatt and Kevin Monroe. Kevin, of course, outstanding defensive back in his playing days at East Carolina. And Kevin will be a part of the Pirate Radio Network as ECU hosts Gardner-Webb. Saturday, 6 p.m. kickoff. And if you can't make it to the stadium, that game will be shown on ESPN Plus as well. But Kevin, East Carolina 0-3 at this point, and a loss at Appalachian State last Saturday, a game the Pirates were certainly competitive in for the majority of the game, leading in the third quarter 28-22. But then, like the Marshall game the previous week, the opposition kind of took control in the late stages, and 3 unanswered touchdowns for the Mountaineers to close out a 43-28 victory. And as far as the quarterback situation, Alex Flynn played the majority of the game Saturday. Coach Houston has said that maybe Flynn learns from his mistakes better than Mason Garcia. That was an inference that I took from his remarks on Tuesday. And certainly we need some stability and production at that position.
Yeah, Al, it was an interesting game versus Appalachian State. And unlike a lot of Pirate fans, I don't happen to think that the sky is falling. We are 0-3, and things could be better, certainly. But I would think if you look back at the schedule, at best you'd think we'd be 2-1, obviously losing to Michigan and then finding a way to beat Marshall at home and then App on the road. But I think even that would probably be wishful thinking. App is just in a better position in their program right now than where we are. But I do think that this move to start Alex Flynn gives us promise for the remainder of the season. And that doesn't mean that I don't think that Mason Garcia will ever come back and take over the starting job. I just think he's not ready now, and we can't afford to let him figure things out on the field during the season. He has to get that stuff figured out in practice and be ready to implement it on the field, unless we are, in a blowout situation or something like that, and he wants to come in and get some reps, or a special package for him. I'm not opposed to them having a package for Mason Garcia where he come in and he runs a ball or throws a deep ball or what have you. I just think that right now Alex Flynn has shown that he is the best option for moving the football down the field. That being said, Alex Flynn threw 3 interceptions, all of which were fairly untimely. One of them, the very first one, I would say wasn't a bad read, just a bad throw. After that, they get a little dicey. So it seemed like he was forcing balls into, tight areas, and I just think that was the right decision. But at least he commits and is decisive and makes throws. And that was the issue I had with Mason Garcia. I didn't think he was decisive. I saw the offense move the ball down the field. Now, there's still some issues. We could be a little bit better on offensive line. We could have less drops at the receiver position, specifically on offense. And then defensively, we should have been better against the run. Now, Nate Noel was a tough back because he was so small, so quick, so fast. By the time you realize he had the ball sometimes, he was always scooting by you. And so that was tough. And I think the very first carry he had, or one of the first carries he had, went the distance. And I think the Pirates did settle in through the middle part of that game and did well against the run. But then in the latter half of the game, App turned it back up and was able to put some yards up and some points up. So, I think that defensively at linebacker and D-line, we're still playing pretty well. DB, we could get a little bit better, but we're not bad. And then on offense, the running game, we saw some hints of it coming together. Quarterback, we saw some hints of that coming together. So I think this team is poised to go into the conference and do okay. I don't think that they're, I'm hearing Pirate fans saying, we'd be lucky to win 1 game or 2 games. I don't think that's the case. I think we, with 9 games remaining, they can still make a run at trying to be bowl eligible and win 6 of those 9. So we'll see how it goes. But certainly last week was disappointing for Pirate fans that thought we should beat App. I just don't know if our program today is where App's program is.
Well, Kevin, the coaches have indicated even before the season that improvement was going to be a vital aspect of this team's success. So despite the start There is promise for improvement. They're working in that regard. A very bright spot for the Pirates, I think, is a young corner, Antoine Jackson. And pick six, made a play, scored a touchdown. And he's one of the most highly rated recruits that East Carolina has had.
Yeah, I mean, between he and Mason Garcia, they'd probably be the two highest recruited players on the team right now. And a guy like that, you got to get him on the field. You know, he could have gone a lot of different places, chose East Carolina. You got to get him on the field. And at corner, it's one of those positions where, man, it takes some experience. It takes some kind of figuring things out. And he won't be perfect all year long. You know, he'll make some mistakes. He'll guess a few times where he shouldn't, and he'll hopefully not get beat for any touchdowns. But he'll make some mistakes. And it was good to see him have some confidence, be able to break on a ball, a poorly thrown ball by the quarterback to pick it off and just run it in just a few yards out on a pick six. So that was a big change in the game. They gave the Pirates the lead again after being down. And so, yeah, I'm excited about Jackson. I've heard nothing but good things about him. And so far, so good. But, Pirate fans will have to be patient with him because he's a young guy and he will make some mistakes.
Kevin, there's a big difference in losing and winning in college football. And talk about, what the likely possibility of a win on Saturday would do for this program.
I think for the most part, people would expect a win. You're at home, you're an FCS opponent. A win is expected, but that's not always the case, right? We've certainly lost to FCS opponents in the past. And, with the season going the way it is, there's no guarantees. But being at home in front of your home crowd, if you come out, you show well, you play well, you get a nice double-digit win, I think that does boost confidence because, frankly, the rest of the schedule is not sexy. To play teams like Rice and SMU, people don't, stand in line to buy those tickets. Now, Pirate fans obviously are season ticket holders and they'll show up no matter what. But it's not the schedule that it started out with. It's not Michigan. It's not even Marshall has a name for itself. App State, people show up for those kind of games. The rest of the schedule is in conference, and it just doesn't light up the scoreboard in terms of how excited you get about watching those teams play. But I think the Pirates, especially with the exit of Cincinnati and Houston and UCF, are going to be very competitive in this conference for as long as they're in it. And so they should be – every one of these games from here on out should be winnable games. Obviously, Tulane will be tough. They're a very, very good team. But they should be able to play with Tulane without a doubt. So a win this weekend, I would say, would spur this team forward in the hopes to having a good back half of the season.
Well, that's the result that we'll be looking for Saturday night. You mentioned SMU, of course, and they have worked out the finances to where they'll be going to the ACC. And American Athletic Conference is looking at the possibility, we understand, of adding Army. And, your thoughts as far as this realignment process that's going on across the country.
Yeah, I mean, as long as the Pirates are, and we talked about this a week ago, as long as the Pirates are putting themselves in a position to where when there's a big shift, whether it be if Power 5 changes or if they can be included in the Power 5, as long as they're positioned in a way to take advantage of it, I'm all for it. I don't really care who comes in and out of the conference until we get there. But, it really doesn't matter if you're not amongst the big boys. I'm not saying they deserve to be in the SEC, but certainly they can find a fit in one of these conferences, one of these major Power 5 conferences where they can, kind of go into the future of college football. And who knows what that future looks like. I'm excited for whoever they play on any given Saturday. But I think the Pirates, with their history, with their alumni base, with their home attendance record, with their success on the football field in the past, deserve the opportunity to play with the big boys, and I hope that comes soon.
Kevin, talk a little bit about the mindset that the Bulldogs will bring on Saturday night. FCS opponent, Big South Conference champions last year. They went to the second round of the FCS playoffs, and so they probably feel like if they put forth their best effort, they've got a shot at an upset.
Yeah, I watched the Zoom call with Coach Lamb earlier this week, and he seems very confident that they'll play well, they'll be prepared, and that they can compete with East Carolina. And, I don't doubt that that's, true in his mind, and maybe it will be on the field. But, technically speaking, East Carolina should have the better talent. They should be a deeper team. It's just the way it's set up between FCS and FBS. I would expect they would come in here expecting to win, but I would also expect that East Carolina should be able to handle this opponent, not with any sort of ease, but I think they should be able to handle them at the line of scrimmage, both offensive and defensive line, and they should be able to match their speed. And so that's what it's going to come down to, is matching your opponent and then finding a way to pull away from them. But I certainly expect them to come in expecting to win.
Talk a little bit, Kevin, about the difference between 85 scholarships and 63 scholarships.
It makes all the difference. There's lots of kids out here, and I'm going through this right now with my son, who's a junior in high school playing football and wants to play college football on scholarship. There's lots of good players that want to play somewhere. And these FBS schools that have 85 scholarships, there's so many different opportunities. It's very, very competitive, but it's a lot of opportunities to get on a team and play and to show what you can do. To only have 63 scholarships, it's tough. Plus, you've got to compete with not having some of the facilities. Maybe not being in a high-powered conference or a conference with as much notoriety, not getting the opportunity to play on television every week. There's so many different things that, make it tough for FCS programs to thrive. They still have good academic programs. They still have good football, but they play in front of smaller crowds. They don't have as many scholarships to offer. They don't have the TV deals. It goes on and on and on. They don't have the facilities. And so the things that the FBS programs are allowed to have or have amassed over the years because of their money separates them from the FCS programs.
Kevin, I don't think I've ever asked you about the recruiting process that got you to East Carolina.
Yeah, so it was interesting. I moved to Greenville as a sophomore in high school, so I was a relative unknown, including to the coaches at Rose High School. And so I came in and I thought I was a quarterback. I played quarterback as a freshman at the school I came from in Montgomery, Alabama. And so it took me – I got immediately put on the JV team my 10th grade year. And so it took me halfway through the year. I can remember the game. Coach Baker, the head coach at Rose High School at the time, he came to a JV game on the road at Jacksonville. And I think the JV coaches had been telling him how well I had been playing. And I picked off a pass just before halftime, near the opposing team was going in to score. So I picked off the pass at about the 10-yard line. And I commenced to zigzagging all down the field and finally got right out of bounds at about the other 10-yard line. So it's about a 90-yard return that included sideline to sideline work. And I got knocked out of bounds and fell on the ground right in front of Coach Baker, the head varsity coach. And he just kind of looked at me and was like, "Son, that was pretty impressive." And the next week I was moved up to varsity. When I got on varsity, I was only doing, punt and kickoff return and like second string defensive back. So I didn't play a whole lot. And so going into my junior year, I wasn't even slated to start. And, I certainly wasn't getting recruited. Nobody knew about me. And I remember the guy who was playing in front of me at corner was a senior. And, I think everyone knew that I was probably the better player, but coach always gave the benefit of the doubt to the seniors until they proved they couldn't do it. Well, he got himself in some trouble at school and was suspended. And so I started, I think it was week 2 that season because he wasn't there, and I got 2 interceptions. And from then on, he never played again. And I started to gain some confidence, gain some momentum, started getting some recruiting letters. And by the end of my junior year, I was being recruited pretty heavily by both East Carolina and NC State, and then, a number of FCS programs, so on and so forth. And it kind of came down between ECU and NC State. ECU offered me first. East Carolina came to my house. Coach Logan and Coach Chuck Pagano, who was the defensive back coach at the time, came to my house in Greenville, sat in my living room with my parents and, expressed how much they wanted me. I didn't commit on the spot. I was still waiting for the NC State offer just so I could, kind of compare and contrast. And I remember my father saying to me when they left, son, what are you doing? Like, this is the best offer you have. NC State has not offered you. They may not offer you. You need to, if you want to play the big time Division I football, you need to call them back and go ahead and commit. And I did that. I called Coach Logan on the way home from his house, from my house, and I went ahead and committed. And literally that week at school, the state coach showed up and offered me after East Carolina had offered me. And so, I turned them down, obviously, and came on to East Carolina. And that was kind of my path to getting recruited to be a Pirate.
Well, recruiting has certainly changed from the standpoint of the transfer portal in that situation. A lot different, but it is what it is. And East Carolina it looks like they have made some good acquisitions through the portal. I think that offensive line is missing some talented players that have gone elsewhere, but certainly I think East Carolina has adjusted well to dealing with the transfer portal, and we see some good athletes out there that have played elsewhere on the college level before coming to ECU. Kevin, let's talk about that Bonesville tradition. Kevin's keys to the game.
Yeah, I'll comment real quick on the transfers and the portal. I heard Deion Sanders say in an interview, they only are going to recruit, under 10 high school kids a year, and they may only offer 5 or 6 scholarships to high school kids. He said because there's so much pressure for college coaches to win now. Why bring in a kid that you've got to, get ready to play instead of getting a kid that's ready to play now? And so it's ready to win now. And so that's the way he built his program at Colorado. They had 88 new players this year, which was the most in the country. I think East Carolina was on that list with 57 new players in this calendar year. And so it's the wild, wild west. Players that come to East Carolina but think that they're better than East Carolina will stay for a while and leave to try to upgrade. And there's players that come to East Carolina that maybe don't play as much as they would like to, and they find, an FCS program or somebody else that they think they can, maybe a lateral move, I think they can play right away. And so it's all over the board with this transfer portal. I'm hoping that the NCAA comes in and says you have to offer a certain amount of scholarships to high school kids, because it's all about high school sports, and that you can't keep, switching back and forth the same college kids. Eventually those kids got to graduate, right? And then where does the rest of the kids come from? And so there has to be a certain number of high school kids coming out every year that get the opportunity to have scholarships. And so I'm hoping the NCAA does that. But in the meantime, you're going to have to stay competitive. You're going to have to go the transfer portal route. You have to go JUCO college route, but also, mix in some high school kids as well. And I think East Carolina is trying to find their way doing that. Not all of those guys land. You get those kids with the big names, the Tennessees and the Auburns, and they don't always work out. But then you get those that do. And so I'm excited to see where the players on the current roster, how good they can be at different positions. So far, so good. But as you mentioned, we're weak in some spots. We can be better at corner, which is why you saw Jackson playing now. We could be better on the offensive line. We could be better at quarterback. So I would expect in the offseason that they continue to make some additions in those spots, among others. So coming Saturday, big time opponent in Gardner-Webb, in that it's the next game, and we're 0-3. This is a program that's Big South champions, as you mentioned. They can beat the Pirates. They played well against App State until later in the game. App State pulled away, kind of like they did against the Pirates. So I think this is a program where you got to hit them in the mouth early. So my first key is going to be to jump on Gardner-Webb early and often. So if it's defensively, they've got to find a way to force some turnovers, get some stops, get off the field, control the line of scrimmage. If it's offensively, move the change, get some big plays, score and score often. So hit them in the mouth and don't relent. That's the first thing. Second thing, they've got to get the running game going. I saw spurts of it this past week. I thought Rajay Harris had a couple good carries. I think Bond did pretty good. I need to see more from Marlon Gunn. He didn't do much on this past Saturday, but they've got to get the running game going. And I'm the first to say that once you have the threat of the pass, that opens it up for the run. And I think Alex Flynn now brings us the threat of the pass. So getting that running game going. And then defensively, you wouldn't have to, in the past games, you wouldn't have to hear me say, stop the run because the Pirates have been so good at that. But they faltered some in this past week. So they have to get back to controlling that line of scrimmage and being able to stop the run defensively and forcing Gardner-Webb to beat them through the air. They have a pretty good quarterback. He's averaging 245 yards a game. Completes about 57% of his passes. He'll make some mistakes. So you want to make them throw the ball more often than they want to. They currently, throw it probably 2/3 of the time. Maybe 60-40 throwing a pass into run. And so we want to force them to throw the ball a lot more. And that means stopping the run up front.
Well, Kevin, excellent summary as always of the factors that will decide that game Saturday night. East Carolina hosting Gardner-Webb. And, of course, you can tune into the Pirate Radio Network and hear Kevin's analysis during the course of that contest. But, as always, great visiting with you, Kevin, and look forward to the next week on the Bonesville Pregame Podcast.
Appreciate it, Al.